This is the plaintiff, Brandon Mack. He says the defendant's unleashed dog charged at him and his dog Scooby, and his poor dog was torn to shreds. He's been horribly traumatized. Scooby was terribly injured, and he's here in the name of justice, suing for the $10,000 he's owed. These are the defendants, LaShawn and Anthony. Anthony says the plaintiff's dog was not on a leash, and out of nowhere, he charged at him and his mom's dog, Samantha. They have no idea why this guy thinks he's owed $10,000 when the attack was all his fault, and they think the judge will agree. They're accused of losing control.
All parties, please raise your right hands. The People's Court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Marilyn Milian is now presiding. Good morning, Your Honor. Litigants have been sworn, Your Honor.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.
All right. Mr. Mack, you were walking your dog and some rather unpleasant things developed. Tell me what happened.
Good morning, Your Honor. Yes. To give a summary of what occurred the date of the event, I was walking my dog in my neighborhood as usual. I was in the Bronx on West 174th Street and University Avenue. I suffer from mild asthma. I always keep an albuterol pump on me. About 10 minutes into our walk, I started having some shortness of breath. I was on the corner of University Avenue and West 174th Street. I began utilizing my inhaler. My dog is a registered service animal. He is trained to respond to me when I am exhibiting trauma or distress of any kind because I have anxiety. And so, being that I was having lack of breath, he seemed a little bit anxious to use the bathroom and things like that on the walk. So I took the leash off of him momentarily to allow him to use the tree on the bathroom in front of me. As I was using the inhaler and he was using the bathroom directly in front of me, I witnessed co-defendant Anthony walking two pit bulls of similar size to my dog, although slightly larger. One of the pit bulls was leashed, the female of the two. The other was a male pit bull, and the male pit bull was not on a leash. I'm not sure if co-defendant Anthony was in the process of putting the leash on the dog, which is what I believe I witnessed, because he was holding the dog by the collar around its neck. Within a few seconds of me just witnessing this after I was using my inhaler, the dogs had kind of made contact with each other and they started charging at one another. When his dogs charged at my dog, it grabbed my dog by the neck.
Did you say the dogs were charging at each other, or did you say his dogs were charging at your dog?
His dog charged at.
Because you said at each other, so the dogs are being dogs, I guess, right?
No, I meant his two dogs.
Okay.
Because he had two dogs and I had one. They charged at us, and the one dog that was that was on the leash also had gotten out of his control in the startled commotion.
What do you mean by the phrase "was out of his control"? That's your conclusion. Tell me factually what you saw.
The leash came off of his hand.
Okay, go ahead.
Yes, he had released it, I believe, accidentally, but now both of the dogs are biting my dog at different places, at the neck, back of the head, the ears, pulling him at different ends, and my dog is not defending himself. So the only option I had to stop the commotion, because co-defendant Anthony, if I'm referring correctly, yes, co-defendant Anthony just stood there, and I had no choice but to aggressively hit both of the defendant's dogs in order to get them to stop.
What do you mean he just stood there? Literally just watched it, enjoying it? What do you mean?
I don't believe he took enjoyment in it. However, he stood there perhaps in shock. He stood there watching.
So he didn't do anything to separate the dogs?
He tried to command the dogs, but the dogs are obviously vicious and not trained and do not respond to him orally.
So he didn't stand there doing nothing. He was yelling, but doing nothing physically. Okay, go ahead.
Nothing physically.
Okay, go ahead.
In the process of me hitting the dogs to get them to remove their jaws from my dog, the dogs did attempt to bite me, and they scratched me in various places and bit me in several locations. The wounds just weren't puncture deep like on my dog.
Do you have any photographs of the injuries to you? Because I noticed you're not suing for injuries to you.
Because I submitted evidence. I submitted photos of all of my and the dog's injuries. The reason I'm suing for emotional distress for myself and only the veterinary bills for the dog is because I took the dog to the emergency room and to my primary veterinarian. When I followed up with my primary care physician, I wasn't injured to the point that It was more or less deemed superficial. So I wasn't injured to the point that they had to, it was like medical attention was required.
At some point, you're successfully able to separate the dogs. How?
I hit them a lot of times. Unfortunately, that was all I could do because the owner of the dogs couldn't get them off.
All right, so what happens? You separate the dogs, and then what happens?
Okay, so I took the dogs off my puppy, and co-defendant Anthony led me to his building, where he asked me to wait downstairs for him for about 10 minutes or so, and came back downstairs with his mother, co-defendant LaShawn. And co-defendant LaShawn offered me water and like different dog first aid tools. She had like antiseptic or like antibiotics, like dog neosporin, things of that nature to clean up the wounds and things like that. As she had mentioned that, you know, she's familiar with this concept because this has happened to her before. She's told me before that her dog...
Is that your conclusion or is that something she said?
That's something she's told me.
What exactly did she say to you?
That her dogs have attacked another dog before. This is why she had the supplies on hand.
She said, I have these supplies because my dogs are always attacking other dogs. I don't find that people usually admit that, but you're saying that's what she said.
Yes, she said that to me, that this has happened to her before.
Okay, go on.
And so as she's cleaning up my dog, we had discussed what protocol I would be taking with her in order for things to proceed forward. Co-defendant LaShawn and Anthony and I made an agreement. They gave me $200 in cash, which I believe I documented through my evidence. And we discussed that I was going to take my dog to the vet and they would pay for the vet bills. This is discussed in text as well.
And then what happened when you presented the text bills to them?
Co-defendant LaShawn had promised that her son would pay me $200 weekly until my vet bills were paid off. And that first payment would have been a week after the conversation we had, which would have been Thursday, May the 6th.
Did he make the payment?
No, aside from the initial $200 that happened the day of the attack, I didn't receive any more money from either defendant.
You were walking the dogs, Mr. Anthony. Tell me what happened.
All right, so I was walking my two dogs.
What kind of dogs are they?
Blue Nose Pit, mixed with Siberian Husky.
And you had one on a leash and the other one wasn't. Why was the other one not on a leash?
Nah, both of my dogs was on the leash.
Okay, and? His
dog was off the leash, came charging towards us, grabbed Samantha's face. So then, after that, my dog started defending himself. Then, he was nowhere to be found for like a minute. I'm screaming like, where's the owner? Nobody to be found. Then he come running down the block. Then he helped me break up the dog fight.
What kind of dog do you have, Mr. Mack?
I own a Pit Bull German Shepherd mix.
Oh, yours is a Pit Bull too. Look at that. He says you weren't right there next to him. How far were you from your dog when your dog was off leash?
About a couple of feet. A couple of steps, at most 4 feet.
So Mr. Anthony's lying when he says that you were nowhere to be found when the dog fight happened.
About as long as a leash. Yes, that is incorrect.
Okay. It was like up the block. Like it's like around the little corner.
Ms. LaShawn, why did you give him $200 and feel so bad when this happened?
Because I'm an animal lover, and I felt real bad that the dog was wounded.
Okay. Did you ever tell the plaintiff that your dogs are biting other dogs all the time? That's why you have the supplies?
No. I told him that my dog was attacked before, last summer. Got loose from its owner. The owner fell and hit her head and attacked my dog.
When you come into court and you're the plaintiff, you have the burden of proving liability. It is your word against his on whether or not his dogs were leashed. You admit your dog wasn't. You just keep saying it doesn't matter because my dog is so well trained, but it does matter. And he does not admit to his dogs being off leash. He says your dog ran at his dogs and that's how things happened. You know, you have your word against his. I have you kind of, you know, honestly, you're kind of trying to make your case better in many respects, saying that she said this happens all the time, calling those dogs vicious when you have no idea, telling me at first that the two dogs were running to each other and then you correct yourself, then, telling me you had to run to where the fight was and then telling me 2 steps. Like you just, you're trying to win. And I understand that because that's an expensive vet bill. It's a bill of $1,000 and they've only helped you with 200 of it. Of course, you're suing for 10 grand, instead of the 800. When you come to court, you have the burden of proving by a preponderance of the evidence that your version carries the day, and I've got your word against his. And I'm sorry, I just don't think you've carried your burden, and my verdict in this case is for the defendants.
So the plaintiff fails to convince the judge he should prevail in this $10,000 lawsuit. Mr. Mack, really, are you shocked right now or not? What are you thinking?
I've never experienced something like this, and unfortunately, I should have had more time to prepare and perhaps even deal with an attorney for this case. I unfortunately am very traumatized by the events, and it's very unfortunate that my dog is a year old and a puppy, and we were attacked, and the defendant won't be able to provide any reparations for me, and I just think that that's unjust.
What about the condition of your dog now? How is your puppy?
He's since healed since the event.
All right. Mr. Anthony, let me ask you how you feel about the outcome. I would imagine you feel pretty good.
Yeah, I feel pretty good.
I feel sorry about the dog.
But I feel sorry about the dog though, because I love all animals.
All right, Harvey, what do you think about this? Interesting case.
So, Doug, the leash law is king in cases like this. If somebody doesn't have their dog on a leash in public and there is a dog fight that erupts, the person who has the dog without the leash is almost always responsible, because if you have a leash, you can prevent a fight by pulling your dog away.
I'm wondering if the judges ever made a decision and found out afterwards that it was wrong. What can they do about that, if anything?
Yes, judges make mistakes. Sometimes they get it wrong, and there are remedies that lawyers can pursue or litigants can pursue in front of a judge when that happens.
What about when you yourself realized that maybe that wasn't right?
Well, you might be able to rectify it and call the parties back in and straighten it out. Of course.
Has that ever happened to you? That's happened to me, where I felt like I sentenced somebody for too many years. I think I sentenced him to 20 years. I had him brought back. I had corrections bring him back from state prison. And I sentenced him to 12, and then he started screaming F you at me because he thought 12 was a lot too.
No good deed goes unpunished.
Right, it was fine though, because it was the right sentence. That's one of the things I've always loved about the job, is that you can always do the right thing.
Right.
And other people may not agree it's the right thing, but you can do the right thing. You can kind of call it back and you can change you got do-overs. You really kind of do have do-overs. My very first time that People's Court aired, the appellate court in Dade County, the 3rd District Court of Appeals, wrote a mock reversal of my first case that ever aired, and said because they knew I couldn't get appealed. So
I think you have that opinion.
I think I have that somewhere, where they said that the lower court's ruling, being so juvenile as to not merit any further discussion, is summarily reversed. Right. And then they sent it to me on the official letterhead, the official letterhead of it, as a joke. It was kind of funny.
That was great.
It's kind of nice to have a job where if you think you did it wrong, you can fix it. Hopefully every job should be that way.
Yeah, but you know what? My brother, who is a doctor, is constantly reminding me of that. And he'll say, you know, John, when we're cutting human tissue, we don't get a chance to get a continuance, take a recess, or get a do-over. You either get it right or you don't. He likes to kind of remind me of that all the time.